Welcome to Health, Wellbeing and Lifestyle, where experts in the field inform, educate and inspire the community to be healthier, more balanced and live the lifestyle they love. Our first guest today is Jacqui Grant. She's an NDIS business consultant and empowerment coach. Welcome to the show, Jacqui.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Jacqui, what's the secret for NDIS providers to be successful?
One of the big key points to being a success is to understand your scope of practice and to ensure that those services that you want to provide are actually part of a participant's plan. Now, one of the things that happens is that a lot of people decide to be a sole trader in the NDIS business and they think, oh, I'll just get an ABN, I'll get some insurance and that's all I really need. But they don't understand how their services can provide value to participants. Basically, under NDIS, and one of the places to check is the NDIS pricing arrangement on their website, is service providers can be nurses, they could be allied health professionals, support workers. Now that is the biggest one and what most people have in their plan. Psychology, there's even transport, meal prep, and then there's space for respite, short-term accommodation, and then specialised disability accommodation. It's a long list, I understand. And one of the keys for people to have that success for their own business is to know exactly where they fit in with the plan and the value and the importance and that it's reasonable and necessary for the participant. So reasonable and necessary is one of the things that NDIS talk about a lot, and it means that the service that the person has is relevant to their disability and it is necessary. With the scope of practice, one of the things that we currently find, especially with businesses that come to me, is that they don't realise, like, they have a qualification such as a hairdresser, which is great. It's a great skill. But when you want to be a support worker, do you understand what that means and the risks to being a support worker? Because you're providing care and services, so helping someone showering, dressing, shopping. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but when someone has a disability, they are vulnerable, they're open to risk. And if you don't understand how to do a risk assessment, if you don't understand some of the things that are required for that person or even their disability, for example, they may have an acquired brain injury. Now, you need to understand behaviour and how temperament, they might be aggressive, they might withdraw. So understanding those disabilities is really important. And if you don't have that lived experience, then working as a support worker can, in some cases, cause harm rather than what we want, which is empowerment and support and encouraging choice and control for the person, quality of life.
Why is business compliance so important?
Well, in Australia, owning a business, whether it's a company, partnership, there's consumer law, there's ATO requirements and insurance requirements, and NDIS have their set of requirements as well. Now, with that, when you have your paperwork, so your compliance is documents, policies and procedures, and you not only have them, but you use them, you are able to ensure that if there is ever an incident, and let's face it, incidents happen, we're dealing with people, you know exactly what to do, who to go to. Some incidents are reportable to NDIS. So if you don't have your business compliance in place, your business plan, financial plan, you could find yourself at high risk of major problems, and nobody wants that. Now, just to go a little deeper into that, with NDIS, you can either be a NDIS registered service provider, so that means you put an application into NDIS, you have an audit, and you have to understand national practice standards, NDIS practice standards, and then you wait for your registration after your audit, and you will be audited regularly. It's part of NDIS compliance. However, the way NDIS is, you don't need to be a registered NDIS provider, and that means that you don't have to put in the application and you don't have to be audited. But people sort of think, well, if I'm just a sole trader, I'm not NDIS registered, I don't need documents, policies and procedures. Well, technically, best practice would indicate you do, because you should be doing care plans. You should be looking at how you can support your participant with their goals. And that's what a care plan does. It understands the person's needs and how to help them achieve them to be the best they can.
What are some of the tips and advice you'd offer to businesses to increase participation and engagement?
So one of the biggest things I see everywhere, and one of the biggest questions people ask me, so social media, I met a lady in the cafe the other day and she's like, oh, I want to grow my NDIS business, how do I do it? And so one of the first things I asked her was about her social media. What presence do you have? Do you have a website? How do you know that you are the right person for the people reading your Facebook post? Like, what is your message and how clear is it? So having a really good business plan that incorporates a marketing plan can help. A website that is really clear and it makes it easy for people to go, oh, that's the service I want. And it builds trust. And of course, understanding your potential participants' hobbies, interests. What do they want to do? What do they want to get out of their plan? What's important to them? So understanding what that looks like, a day in their life, and how you can best help them achieve that. The other thing is, as a business, network. Get to know other businesses in your area or even nationally, and attend things like networking events, to attend education sessions where you've got those common grounds of, like, you might all be learning about epilepsy or acquired brain injuries or anything, autism, things like that, where you are likely to meet either other service providers and or people that have somebody in their life that has a disability, or it could be the person themselves. So really branching out and getting to know a lot of different people. And finally, word of mouth, reputation. Like when somebody says, oh, Mary was great. She showed up on time. She was reliable and she listened to me. Sometimes that is the best way to get additional business and grow.
Thank you, Jacqui, for such important information. If you'd like to know more about Jacqui Grant and what NDIS service providers can do to be successful, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And after the break, we'll have another interesting guest with another interesting topic.
After the break, animal communicator and therapist Carolyn Pope demystifies animal craniosacral therapy. Welcome back. Today we have Carolyn Pope in the studio. She is an animal communicator and therapist, and today we are going to be demystifying animal craniosacral therapy. Hello, Carolyn.
Hello, it's good to be back.
Yes. Now tell me, can you explain what animal craniosacral therapy is?
Pretty much the same as human craniosacral therapy. A lot of people will know it as CST for short. Derived from osteopathy. It's a very hands-on therapy, but literally the most pressure you're putting on is that of a 5-cent piece. So it's much more allowing the body what it needs to do rather than trying to force the body, because what a therapist thinks the body needs to do versus what the body knows it needs to do can kind of be a bit like the Montagues and the Capulets, really. So the most pressure I'm putting on is literally that of a 5-cent piece. And I often say to my clients, it's like watching paint dry, because they're just sitting and the dog or cat may close its eyes, it may lay down. You're not seeing much. But what's actually going on internally, there's a lot of recalibrating, and it's really, really big. If you ever have a CST yourself, you're going to feel a difference. And that's why I actually collaborate with a vet, because she will bounce information to me, or I will say to her, yeah, not quite sure about X or Y, can you please check that out? Because no one person can fix everything. And often if I'm feeling restrictions, say for example in the spine, everything runs off the spine. So the moment the animal's movement is compromised, so is its digestion, its elimination. Dog may well be having heart problems, for example. All the nerves for the heart innervate out of the parietal bone and go down through the thoracic. So if your dog's got problems in its thoracic area or the parietal bone's jammed, that makes a huge difference to what the dog's heart is doing, and its medication may need to be adjusted. Everything interreacts with everything else. It's the one body. We're past the days of saying, oh, this is good for the heart. The fact that your liver's going to keel over in 6 months has got nothing to do with it. It's that integrative, holistic approach.
And how did you get into it and why?
Started with cranial for myself because I had thyroid problems at the time and really, really bad migraines. And CST actually got rid of them. I was literally being injected every second day with really heavy duty stuff, didn't need anything. Because I'm me, I pushed my therapist to work on a horse I had at the time, and I'd had him for, I think, 6 years by that stage. Great horse, but he'd always been tetchy to put a bridle on. Deb released his temporals, which are temporal bones, which are basically releasing around the ears. And from that day on, I never had another issue with a bridle. And of course, that got my very instant and undivided attention. Started exploring it, spoke to a few clients about it, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to afford it at the time. Had a phone call one day, picked it up, and it was one of the clients. They'd banded together and went, right, you're going to owe us X amount of CSTs. There's a course coming up. This is where it is. We've paid for it. Off you go. So I was incredibly lucky. And from the first day, I was just hooked.
And can you explain exactly what it is you do?
Animal will come in. I also use a bioenergetic handheld device because it speeds things up and it helps calm the animal, because no animal likes being on a table. I mean, obviously horses aren't going to go on a table. That's a little different. But most animals don't like heights in the same way I'm terrified of it. So it helps. And it's literally a hands-on therapy. I can start sometimes at the back end. Other times I'll start with one hand under the chest or the neck or the head. It really depends on the individual animal and also where they're comfortable, because a lot of animals, particularly dogs, can be quite head shy. Or if their neck's really sore, they're not going to want you putting hands on, and trust is earned. It's not given. And if a dog's got a really big problem, or any animal at one end, starting at the other builds up trust and releases the restrictions. So by the time you get to where the problem really is, they're not worried. And a lot of the time they'll literally lie down and just pass out, which is really nice.
And what sort of ailments do you treat?
Pretty much anything in the age bracket. Arthritis, stiffness can help with a lot of dogs that start getting lack of proprioception and neurological as they get older. Vestibular disease in dogs and cats is a big one. Epilepsy, pretty much encephalitis, pretty much anything, because it improves health. It's no different to you. It's being proactive rather than reactive. And of course, the earlier you can get to something, you really need to be proactive. And long term, it's cheaper too to be proactive rather than reactive. I say to people, change of seasons, but you may well find that your dog or cat needs one session a week if they're acute, or it's been let go for a really long time, for 4 or 5 weeks, and you may get down to 1 trip a month. But if you stretch it out to 6 weeks, you might be back to where you are. And it's not fair to our animal friends to leave them in pain when we can make some lifestyle adjustments and change the quality of life so very, very much. Because at the end of the day, quantity is great, don't get me wrong. We all want our animals to live to an old age. But if there's no quality, it's all irrelevant. And this is where holistic health and, in my case, craniosacral therapy makes such a difference. It's about the quality of life. And the more we can do to improve that, the happier everyone is.
And can you please give us some advice on how to have a healthy and happy animal?
Be proactive. I generally say every change of season, as they start to age from about the age of 6, possibly fall with the larger dogs, because of course there's all the rate of aging. But just stuff like all your moodle-oodles and anything with hair under the pads, trim it back, because otherwise it's like you walking in socks instead of bare feet. They slide, they hurt themselves. Tiles, floating floor, timber laminate, polished floorboards, really bad for dogs and aged cats. I know they're a pain, but carpet runners are your best friend, and they can literally, in a lot of cases, be the difference between an animal being on painkillers and not, because every time they slide or scrabble, that's all we see, they experience a lot of pain. Just getting your flooring right, that's where your dog or cat spends 80 to 90% of their time. It makes a huge difference.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today, Carolyn. That was really interesting and very educational. For those interested in learning more about Carolyn Pope and animal craniosacral therapy, please head to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au, and hang around for after the break. We have another amazing guest.
Stay tuned, and after the break we have international meditation teacher and coach Daniella D'Amore talking about a balanced life through spiritual growth. Welcome back. We have international meditation teacher and coach Daniella D'Amore, and the topic we'll be discussing is the importance of a balanced lifestyle through spiritual growth. Welcome, Daniella.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Why is spirituality important for a balanced life?
Spirituality is just as vital in our life as it is to understand our physical body. Right? So if we focus on our physical body and don't focus on our spiritual life, then we don't have a greater sense of purpose in our life. Right? I feel that it's important to balance the physical, the emotional, mental, and spiritual bodies in order to align ourselves to perfect health and well-being, and therefore create a much more healthier and happier lifestyle. It's important to balance all four bodies.
Daniella, what's your personal journey in discovering spirituality for a balanced life?
Well, can I say I've had many journeys that really emphasize the importance of spirituality. But as a young girl, starting out in life, and when I became a woman, I had a lot of issues, health issues with my monthly cycle. And we know today it's called endometriosis, but back then it wasn't diagnosed like that. And it was, very uncomfortable, and I was just given medicine to take. Well, in my feeling, my sense was, no, this is not right. This is supposed to be natural. So why am I taking medicine? No. So I seeked out alternative ways to heal myself through this. And so I did go to a naturopath, I went to acupuncturist, and I started meditation. And over the next few years, I just found that it's, I had good months and I had bad months, but there wasn't that consistency anymore of the uncomfortable feeling. And about 7 years later, I was able to have cycles with no pain because I chose a more spiritual way of dealing with it. But at the same time, I was healing my physical body, sure, but there was a lot of emotional stuff connected to that as well. So in the process of getting that healing through various channels, my emotional body and mental body also started to change. And I became a big advocate for meditation. Meditation became part of my everyday life, and just healthier choices, health and various things that accompany that. The good thing about that is when I went through menopause as well, it just happened. Like there was no side effects or anything. And I know that that was based on the fact that I took care of myself on a physical, emotional, mental and spiritual level, right? I started to embrace my whole self as a woman, having this human experience. And of course I saw the results of that, in due course. And to make that story come full circle, I lived in the United States for a number of years, and during that time I was very honoured to be able to spend time with Native people there in mostly Arizona, New Mexico and South Dakota. And having spent time with the Native women there, I realised that a lot of them did not have the same issues around cycles, monthly cycles, as Western women do? So I explored that a little bit and asked them, various questions. And what I realized was it's something that's actually celebrated. When a young girl becomes a woman, there's a whole ceremony and it's celebrated, and the whole tribe celebrates. Everybody comes out and celebrates it. So it's something that's really embraced, because now she can create life, right? So these native women already start their cycle in a celebratory type way. It's not a stressful thing. And then they maintain spirituality throughout their whole life. They do women's circles and various things, women's gathering, but spirituality is very much a part of their culture, all of the tribes. So it's something that is part of their upbringing. What I found was that they just didn't stress about things the way we did, and there was no expectation, if you will, for them to be anything other than the beautiful women that they are. Whereas I feel in our society, women feel they have to step into a different role, to compete with men sometimes. So we neglect our femininity, whereas they embrace their femininity and their feminine power. And it's a beautiful thing. And they all supported each other through that. So what that helped me realize was that what I was feeling as a young girl really had some substance. Why was I thinking that? I don't know where that came from. I just knew that it was natural for women to be like this and to find the supportive system. So that was really confirming and very affirming as well, because it affirmed how powerful it is for us to embrace who we are. We as women in the Western world, our own power, our own femininity. And of course for men to embrace their own masculinity, who they are. And we play specific roles in that power. So when we can embrace that, we're much more powerful, and our bodies will reflect that, right? But in order to embrace that, there has to be that spiritual side, that meaningful, purposeful, that part of ourselves that we feel is missing. No, it's right here. We've just got to embrace it.
Daniella, that was a great story.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you.
Do you have any advice for our viewers to have a balanced life spiritually?
Well, my advice would be to just listen to their inner self, because that's where our spiritual body resides, somewhere inside of us. Most people will say it's in your heart, but it can be anywhere. It can be in your toe. I don't know where you feel, whatever you feel. But think about how you feel when you see a sunrise or a sunset. There's something magical about that, and we can feel that magic within us. It makes us stop and look at it and go, wow. Or when a rainbow appears, and we all want the rainbow to be magic, magical, and we have a sense of that. Well, that's our spiritual body responding to that. So it's already happening. It's just a matter of making yourself more conscious of how you feel in that moment, and knowing that you have those feelings throughout the day, and they're important. They're an important element to who you are. And then to seek it out more. So how can you get that feeling more and more? Through what? Through whatever makes you happy, really. Whatever you do that makes you happy, whatever hobby, or maybe there's people, maybe there's places, things that you like to do that makes you feel happy inside, do more of that. That's all. Because that's called loving yourself. And the more and more you love yourself, the more and more spirituality you're living in your life.
Thank you, Daniella. That was such valuable information. If you'd like to know more about Daniella and how to have a more balanced lifestyle through spiritual growth, please go to her webpage on our website, healthwellbeingandlifestyle.com.au. And we're going to say bye-bye for now, and we'll see you next week. Stay tuned.
If you'd like to know more about our show, please like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel.